On May 18th, 2024, Jenny Nicholson published a 4-hour retrospective on her time at Disney's Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser. In her 4-hour retrospective, Jenny dives deep into her disappointing $6,666 two-day, two-night experience, offering expectations and suggestions for what might have saved an otherwise dysfunctional playtime. Today's episode of Gameservatory is going to pick up where she left off. I'm going to bring to bear my 6 years of designing, building, and staging escape rooms and immersive theater to see if we can fix Disney's Galactic Star Wars, Starcruiser Wars, Hotel Inn and Suite Wars. Punch it! Part 1. Immersion. I have a love-hate relationship with the word immersive. It holds an intoxicating sway over all of us because it implies something different to everyone who hears it, making it a dangerous buzzword in both pre-production and marketing. I couldn't agree more with Jenny's point that
theme parks are themed. I love that about them, but that's not revolutionary. That's just what they've always been. Disney has had these design principles forever. They just used other synonyms for immersion. It was called realism, maybe feeling transported, maybe escapism, maybe even this plaque that Walt Disney installed at the entrance to Disneyland when he built it. He didn't know about the word immersion yet, but if he had, it would probably be the only word on there.
But Starcruiser was supposed to be Disney's most immersive, 100% immersive attraction to date. So what the f*** does that mean? Well, in terms of experiential entertainment, I like to think of guest immersion as two interdependent occurrences: external perception and internal continuity. The first is the easiest to understand. Does the setting capture the look and sound, the feel, and, when appropriate, the smell and taste that one might expect? Is the set construction, lighting, wardrobe, soundscape all high quality and enveloping? The second half is a bit more nebulous, probably because that's where everyone's expectations vary the most. Does the narrative make sense within the setting, and does it reflect the expected themes and tone? Is the player's role consistent within that narrative? Do interactive activities like mini-games and puzzles feel authentic to their role? And do player interactions have a perceptible, proportionate impact on the world, characters, and unfolding plot? And then finally, are non-player characters performing believably according to the setting's cultural norms, their own social status, and the narrative stakes? Of these two sides, can you guess which one is more important? If you guessed internal continuity, you and I, same wavelength. But we'd be wrong. And before the rest of you get all high and mighty, you're wrong too. Okay, it was a deceptive question. I'm sorry for the trickery. The reality is, immersion is an important quality of experiential entertainment, but just one among many. The most important aspect, and you're not going to believe this, is how entertaining the core hands-on activity is. See, different types of experiential entertainment have different production priorities. Your classic haunted house, for example, only needs so much production design and really no internal continuity to effectively scare the shit out of you. Low lights, loud noises, twisting corridors, that's going to get you most of the way. In your standard escape room, scenic design and environmental storytelling lend a compelling pretense to time-limited puzzles, but puzzle solving is the point. As long as the puzzles are novel and reasonably challenging, the escape room is gonna be a thrill. The human imagination is a powerful immersion generator, and it needs less immersive fuel than one might expect. Hell, sometimes bad production quality can even be ideal. I've been in some seriously terrifying redneck haunted houses that no high production haunt could ever compete with, because I don't think drunk Hank gave a fuck about safety regulations, and I'm pretty sure he brought that chainsaw from home. For Starcruiser, however, both the immersive interactive story and luxury cruise experience were the central advertised event. Over and over again, Disney promised everything to everyone, and there's no way that could get out of hand.
It takes the best elements of, say, our cruising with Disney Cruise Line, with a resort stay, at the same time entertainment, but all wraps it up into one storyline.
Well, and if you just want to be a tourist down on the planet, you can just be a tourist and then go back to the cabin, take a nap, have some lunch, right? Like, you can really choose to be as casual about this as you want, or dive as deeply as you want to.
Unfortunately, that's not exactly how Starcruiser turned out, in Jenny's own words.
So if you're gonna pay to go and not do the gameplay, you might as well just throw handfuls of cash down your garbage disposal. This is like asking, can you go to your local theater and buy 20 movie tickets only to sit in the lobby for 2 days straight?
Starcruiser was seriously lacking certain luxury cruise niceties, which is Honestly surprising, but we'll get back to that. First, I want to take a closer look at Starcruiser's interactive storyline. At D23 2019, CEO Bob Chapek introduced Starcruiser with,
"Your vessel is the Halcyon, a glamorous starliner. And once on board, you'll cruise to the galaxy for 2 days and 2 nights, while becoming the hero of your very own Star Wars adventure."
We all know what it means to be a Star Wars hero, a swashbuckling devil-may-care scoundrel with a heart of gold, or a courageous survivor with dreams of adventure and a higher calling, or a clever, uncompromising champion of freedom for all of the galaxy. But what does it mean to become a Star Wars hero on a 2-day cruise? A very specific kind of plot, but not unworkable. It's tempting to think the cruise backdrop is a complicating factor, but it's actually doing Disney a lot of favors. Where in the Star world do a few hundred people, ranging from Padawan to Palpatine, reasonably belong? Well, not only does the cruise explain away such a wide demographic, it also primes 2 super important player expectations. That public spaces will be crowded like you'd expect on a cruise ship, and second, it acts as a gentle ramp into the mindset of playing pretend. As Jenny notes,
The last thing you want is for your product to alienate the Thompsons from Iowa who love to spend money on Disney vacations but have never stepped foot inside a board game store.
Disney recognized this too. They intended for every guest to begin their narrative arc as simply a passenger and end as their own personal definition of hero. But best I can tell, the actual guest experience wasn't so much an arc as it was a quantum state. I mean, Starcruiser's guests were referred to as passengers, but they weren't really treated as passengers. For example, guests begin their first day aboard the Halcyon, training to pilot the ship, manage its cargo systems, and fire the onboard weaponry. You know, cruise stuff. I mean, I've never been on a cruise, so correct me in the comments, but that doesn't really seem like a thing that passengers typically do. And as with any cruise, should a fascist militia forcibly board in search of their political enemies, guests may, at their personal behest, be deputized to hunt down this rebel scum, or else aid and abet your garden variety luxury Starline freedom fighters. Wait, no. Sorry, that's not how cruises work, do they? Let me know. Instead of a single concise plot, Disney opted to tell multiple concurrent interweaving stories that compelled guests to either ally with the Resistance, the First Order, or a smuggler band attempting a heist. Forgive me for being the last person in the galaxy to point this out, but when I think of passenger turned Star Wars hero on a 2-day cruise, the last thing that would ever come to my mind is joining up with the First Order. Mommy, Daddy, I wanna... Reframing a deadly conflict between freedom and tyranny as a playful sibling rivalry puts passengers and cast alike in a weird spot. Everyone has to play coy about what everyone else is up to because Disney invented a scenario where Resistance and First Order are sharing lodgings and dinner and a quick round of skeet shooting on the bridge together. Now, I'm not saying the experience needs to be as tonally serious as the movies. I think it's smart and charming that First Order characters respond to players challenging their authority with, smarmy quips and not, cold clocking a child with their blaster rifle. But at the same time, keeping up appearances, at least initially, that ship business isn't passenger business significantly elevates those stakes when players ultimately are involved in more surreptitious activities. But wait, pump the brakes. Didn't I just say that immersive depth isn't the most important thing? Aren't I being a CinemaSins pilled shit gibbon? I mean, in my defense, it's my job to think about this stuff so that players don't have to, but practically speaking, all of this only matters if you took Disney's marketing at face value. As Jenny says,
The thing about these ads is, anyone with a functioning brain sees this footage and is like, that feels improbable. Logistically, I doubt I'll be doing a solo run through a whole satisfying, movie-accurate adventure.
experiential entertainment of this caliber isn't broadly mainstream, so even if the Thompsons from Iowa bought into the marketing, their expectations aren't going to be all that sophisticated. Disney's production value and hospitality were always going to mesmerize the majority of Starcruiser's guests. Or as ContraPoints so concisely puts it.
There's that, I think it's a Douglas Adams quote, that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Well, I feel like that also applies to art. Any art form that you don't have experience in also feels like magic.
While Disney didn't make anything close to what they advertised, immersively speaking, what they ended up making was in fact a fun, compelling, immersive enough Star Wars experience. When it worked.
Part 2. Game Overboard.
Jenny describes a bevy of issues that she and other guests ran into throughout the lifetime of Starcruiser's run. In her own words,
Over the year and a half the Starcruiser was open, I saw loads of comments from people who were very excited to go and left extremely disappointed. And wouldn't you know it, a lot of them had the exact same issues I did. General issues with the app glitching or freezing. Character performers being too swamped to interact with. Arriving 5 minutes early to a scheduled story moment only to find that it had begun 15 minutes early and they'd missed it entirely. Beginning a dialogue tree in the app only to get left on read by the AI, barring them from joining any storylines. Performing actions in the gameplay which didn't appear to register in their profiles. Story outcomes that seemed random. Plenty of people went home feeling like they had missed out on the experience and like they weren't able to properly participate in the story. The more I read, the more I realized that even guests who initially said they had a great time would later admit that the gameplay had not worked right for them.
clearly the Starcruiser experience is at its most brittle in the downtime between meals and dedicated attractions, where its management systems were tasked with filling player itineraries with self-directed quests and faction-specific performances. For this to work, a variety of activities were developed to occupy 200 to 400 people, activities that needed to be broadly applicable to unrelated, if not diametrically opposed, plot lines. Now, this isn't necessarily a big deal. Role-playing game designers create plot-agnostic missions all the time, but it does place some limitations on the nature and depth of those activities. Additionally, sophisticated game management and networking infrastructure was necessary to track guest alignment with various faction characters based on in-person and in-app interactions, and then distribute aforementioned missions accordingly. All of this is technically impressive, but as Jenny illustrated so well, its complexity is also its undoing. If the player's mobile hardware, operating system, client app, or the Starcruiser's own networking logic or Wi-Fi hardware fail, the entire experience fell apart. You see where I'm going with this. We can eliminate a lot of technical and creative overhead just by scrapping the faction alliance mechanics. Disney's biggest fault was equating this particular type of player agency with immersion, when in reality, no one would have blinked an eye about joining up with the Resistance by default. This wouldn't even eliminate the plot branching entirely. In fact, it makes the story appear more reactive to player preference. Instead of front-loading the faction choice at the beginning, Starcruiser's narrative could pepper several opportunities for guests to sell out the Resistance along the way. Or else, if you want to help Gaia and her crew heist that shiny jewel, players can still prioritize that during their free time as well. But for most guests, a standard Resistance plot is going to be more than sufficient. However, plotline consolidation doesn't automatically fix all of our problems. We still need to solve the design challenge of filling out guest itineraries in a fail-proof way. Let's begin giving guests a few more things to do. To the cruise amenities!
Part 3. Putting the cruise in Starcruiser.
That's not going to work. Now, I'm going to take my liberties here because Disney has more money than God, but it's fair to assume from Disney's own customer interest survey that the design team asked for some of this stuff and were simply told no for a million reasons between time and budget. But I'm not a regular Disney employee. I'm an imaginary one. Imaginary Imagineer, if you will. Okay. All right, so with Daddy Chapek's credit card in hand, let's build a Star Wars cruise boat. First things first, every cruise needs a pool. Let's give it a Naboo theme, some cool-ass Gungan-style slides, and a neat video projection of Naboo sea life in a virtual wraparound aquarium. You know, you tap on the glass, you make the digital fish swim away, you get the idea. Obviously, we need an arcade and casino. The arcade features games from all over the galaxy, like a single-player game from Gasganu's planet that plays a little bit like QWOP. You either need one really confident player or up to 4 cooperative players to manage each joystick. And hell, We're Disney. Let's wrangle some AAA companies to produce arcade cabinets and show off their Arabesh-styled logos as developer sponsors. Now, on the casino side, you could play Halcyon's version of Sabacc. Maybe there's a few Pazak games in the corner as a wink to the Knights of the Old Republic fans. And of course, you have a whole bunch of those cute droid slot machines from Canto Bight. I'd probably also add like a VR-powered pod racer game in the arcade that people could bet on in the casino as well. To get our blood pumping, let's throw in a rec center that hosts like force meditation, aka guided meditation, plus some light yoga. Another fun option could be Star Wars Tybo. A peppy alien instructor flanked with an eclectic mix of fitness droid assistants. For our creatives, let's put in an art studio with a digital easel that contributes to a live mural displayed on rotation throughout the ship, alongside some Alderanian jewelry making classes or something. I'm not an amenities guy, there's a lot more that can be done here, but this at least gives guests a bit more to occupy themselves with while nudging the setting closer to what it's meant to be. But Jeremy, I hear you say, are a few cruise amenities really gonna fill all that downtime with sweet, sweet Star Wars adventure? Well, of course not, but thank you for asking. We need a few more dedicated attractions to amp up the immersive thrill. And what kind of designer would I be if I didn't spend way too much time meticulously considering what those would look like?
Part 4. Adventure worth the price of admission.
One aspect of Jenny's criticism I agree with most is how pedestrian the main attractions of Starcruiser are compared to the cost of the experience. To echo Jenny, these activities were significantly elevated by their theatrical context, i.e., the actors working their asses off to make player engagement feel narratively meaningful. By and large, the actors' effort worked to great effect. I have nothing critical to say about Starcruiser's cast or their direction. They are acting. It's only fair that this effort is matched by an equally sensational set of attractions. So if you will indulge me, here's my pitch for 5 main attractions that should have been part of Starcruiser. Okay, so here's the deal. I wrote pitches for 5 immersive, interactive attractions that I'd be confident in engineering, but then it hit me, y'all, I'm currently moving out of the apartment I can no longer afford. I don't have time to record all of that. And if you're familiar with my channel, you know I'd want to make animatics for all of them because, that would be fun to watch. And then this video would come out about 100 years after the sun went supernova. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you a quick description of each, and then we'll dive into a few experiential entertainment design concepts. Now, for every $25 worth of cumulative subscriptions I get on Patreon, I'll create a featurette about one of the 5 designs with the whole Gameservatory treatment, 3D animations, sound effects, the whole shebang, exclusively for subscribers at any level. So if 25 of you subscribe for $1, that's 1 new animated video just for you. But for now, here's a quick breakdown. Starting with the bridge. Now, this activity remains largely the same, but the narrative context gets a bit of an immersive tweak involving the Halcyon's history as part of the Imperial Navy, resulting in a bit of a scenic glow-up. No rinky-dink arcade games, my version would feature big honkin' laser cannons, the super neat defense minigame would get expanded to accommodate the other half of the audience. Just like the original version, everybody would get to do both. Next, I'd add a spacewalk experience. What is advertised as a luxurious stroll under a glass pedway with a one-of-a-kind view of the stars is of course co-opted by Resistance sympathizers who recruit guests to sneak off and help them destroy First-Order trackers on the actual surface of the ship. In the midst, First-Order sellouts would have an opportunity to undermine the Halcyon's comm systems. The brig jailbreak is another actual Starcruiser activity that I'd want to dramatically expand into a proper laser tag shooting gallery. Think New Hope's Leia rescue, but with First Order battle droids. Before the shootout occurs, First Order sellouts would have a chance to alert their allies, appearing to cause the altercation in the first place. The 4th attraction recruits guests to help sabotage some First Order battle droids that have mysteriously showed up in the maintenance bay in need of repairs. Guests have to conduct an elaborate, high-stakes game of operation on several full-scale battle droids. Think Independence Day Autopsy, but more family-friendly. Of course, the First Order sympathizers can sabotage the sabotage, making the droids more powerful. Before I outline the 5th attraction, it'll help if I talk through a few design concepts. You can think of experiential entertainment as a dance between active and passive participation, the undulating shift between doing and witnessing, not unlike video gameplay, cutscenes, and everything that lies between. Starcruiser is particularly sophisticated, as its dedicated attractions attractions are concentrated bits of experiential entertainment embedded within a grander piece of experiential entertainment. Kind of like chocolate chips in a cookie, they concentrate narrative into an elevated form of immersion that complements... Okay, it's hard to eat and talk. Okay. That complements the rest of the experience. In these attractions, players are given a unique role suited to the specialized environment. As bridge crew, as lightsaber trainees, leveraging extra technologies and bespoke special effects, players are involved in scenarios that standard Starcruiser gameplay simply couldn't portray. These exceptional spaces are an ideal place to blur those lines between passenger and hero because they are aesthetically and normatively separate from passenger spaces. You're already breaking the rules just by being there. What's a few more? And because everyone is guaranteed to experience them, it's a great opportunity for player choice and critical plot progression. Can I just have a YouTube channel where I get to eat cookies on the video? Please? $15 Patreon. Okay. Which brings me to Starcruiser's lightsaber training and why I would cut it. Despite Disney's extensive marketing of this attraction, best I can tell, the activity itself has no direct purpose in Starcruiser's narrative beyond you get to play with a lightsaber for a bit, which, don't get me wrong, is very cool, but Hasbro managed to capture the essence of this and box it up at your local Walmart back in the year of our Lord 1999.
The future of the universe depends on how you play the game. The Sith droid attack game. Your mission, knock it out. You can't hide.
I will find them.
Its sensors track your every move. Deflect its laser bolt shots with your lightsaber. Survive the attack. Prevent the destruction of the Jedi.
God, y'all have no idea how much I wanted one of those growing up. Anyway, why this was hyped up so much kind of boggles my mind, but maybe it shouldn't. Story time! In one escape room I worked on, I created a puzzle where players needed to trace down 4 circuit breakers to shut down a defense network. 2 of the electrical lines were located purely in physical space, but 2 others began in the physical room and then ran into the floors upstairs. On a nearby digital panel, I coded a small video game that showed off this upstairs area where you could reposition security cameras and shut off the last 2 breakers remotely. I intended this interplay of physical and digital technology to create an impression of environmental scale through gameplay, 100% immersive. Right? Well, yeah, for the people who got it, but when the room first opened, it wasn't clear to most players that the physical and digital spaces were related. It took several revisions to visually bridge that gap. Like my ill-conceived puzzle, the technology behind lightsaber training is really neat, but it serves a great example of how, in experiential entertainment, impressive technology doesn't necessarily correspond to an equally impressive effect. As a designer, it's easy to assume that all this complexity we put into something will be felt, when it's just simply not a given. Let's contrast this with Starcruiser's very own bridge training attraction. Unlike lightsaber training, everything within this space is your bog standard, off-the-shelf microelectronic. We got some buttons, joysticks, LEDs, projection displays, but it represents a much more memorable experience due to what happens here, helping C-3PO, R2-D2, helping Chewbacca, helping Rey. This, frankly, fugly Chuck E. Cheese gameplay feels super cool in the moment because of Captain Keevan's performance in conjunction with the impeccably styled environment.
Just as I anticipated, this is probably for kids, but I don't know, I don't like it so far. I guarantee you guys watching this video, you probably won't think it looks fun.
Yeah.
And it wasn't for me at first. Like at first I turned to Peter and I was like, I don't like this. But then like halfway through I was like, okay, I was down with it.
Yeah.
And I got a little like, when Chewbacca came on the screen and stuff, I started to cry a little bit.
Ultimately, bridge training is elevated well beyond the sum of its parts because players both witness and contribute to a critical part of Starcruiser's story. In a word, they become heroes. Okay, so I'm cutting lightsaber training, but what am I going to replace it with? Well, that pitch is a bit more complicated. It actually becomes a dedicated attraction and a cruise amenity. My design adds a brand new character to the cast, who is kind of a cross between like Jocasta Nu and Ellie Sattler, conducting some mysterious archaeological research deep within the Halcyon. So if you want to know more, my Patreon link is in the description. Okay, that's enough. Now that we've got our cruise amenities and a few more dedicated attractions, let's deal with this app.
Part 5. An app walks into a bar with no service.
The Datapad app is a culmination of Disney's highly systemic approach to Starcruiser's interactive narrative. Since the need for many of those systems have been removed, the last step is to foolproof a baseline narrative experience for all guests. With careful narrative delivery, we can create the illusion that guests play an exclusive role in the story. Let me paint a picture. Just after arriving in their rooms for the first time, guests are abruptly contacted on their TVs. A Resistance operative explains that they've identified a monumental discovery on board the Halcyon, and they require assistance from you. I'm sorry to put you in danger like this, but my contact aboard the ship has gone missing. Help me, Thompsons from Iowa Kenobi. You're my only hope. Because this call to action happens in private, it's easier for guests to assume that it's exclusive. Building off of this, let's say later that evening, a First Order lieutenant interrupts Captain Keevan's post-dinner speech. Our initial investigation has led us to suspect that some passengers on this vessel are working with the Resistance. If you happen to spot any of these suspects, please alert the First Order at once. On every place setting's holographic display, the dinner menu is suddenly replaced with a big wanted poster of the guest seated in front of it, and it begins rotating to the other members of their party. The lieutenant's words imply everyone else in the dining room is seeing pictures of that guest and their party when, in reality, each table is just seeing pictures of themselves. See, just by being where they're supposed to be, guests are personally involved in the story with no extra effort on their part. Using similar tactics, we can reinforce this sensation throughout the 2-day journey, guaranteeing a base level of immersion for everyone. But what are we going to do about the app's mission assignment functions? This one is a bit more complicated, but we've already made this design challenge simpler by scrapping the faction plot concept and filling out the itinerary with a few more dedicated attractions. Because guests have less downtime and are presumed to be Resistance, we can create fewer but more detailed side missions. Assuming the guests want to do them. Some of them will want to partake in the amenities instead, but for those who do, here's how I'd structure it. Quest assignment would be diffused across 3 broad categories: in-person, chance discovery, and by virtual request. In-person works much as it did in the original Starcruiser experience, by having characters direct players to complete tasks. Chance discovery would have guests happen upon opportunities to help the Resistance by being in the right place at the right time. Maybe you get slipped some mission details on a coaster from the bar, or maybe that out-of-order arcade cabinet is actually hacked by the Resistance and it beacons you over to help complete a job. And finally, a virtual request is simply using one of the guest terminals, or yes, even the Datapad app, to contact a Resistance operative for a mission.
This isn't all that dissimilar to Starcruiser's native structure, but where Starcruiser bookended dynamic missions in the app,
now we introduce an opportunity for personal choice. Our First Order officer reaches out and may reach out on your Datapad. That's a mobile app on your personal phone, and give you this opportunity. Have you seen this Wookiee? And you can decide, do you help the Resistance? Do you kind of stand strong, lie to him? Or do you help the First Order, let him know, yep, definitely Chewbacca is on board?
my approach would both provoke and conclude player engagement as well as personal choice in person. In activity.
The Datapad app wasn't a bad idea, it just bore too much of the gameplay burden. By having multiple redundant ways to acquire missions, guests are much less likely to find themselves stuck without a way to progress. By further leveraging technologies already in play, like band scanning or QR codes, we can hardwire and localize data transmission between guests and the game management software that previously relied exclusively on a wireless network.
Part 6. Fixing Starcruiser.
Despite its very real issues and my criticism thereof, Starcruiser at its core is a real giant piece of impressive, highly complicated multimedia art. Kevin of Ordinary Adventures says it best.
I think this is a piece of art that you experience from the inside instead of the outside.
Many deeply creative, highly capable people work to bring Starcruiser to life, from game designers, writers, directors, actors, technical engineers, construction crew, set dressers, chefs, merchandising, hospitality. Hospitality, the list goes on. There's no step-by-step instruction for making entertainment like this. Every decision ripples through every one of those departments, and when you're working for a company as large as Disney, no doubt corporate bureaucracy makes a project like this even more complicated. Operationally, Starcruiser's Achilles heel was equating immersion with narrative complexity, and the contingency plans to prevent Jenny's experience clearly weren't foolproof. Ticket price aside, when Starcruiser worked, it appears to have worked pretty well. I suppose I feel the need to underline that because the first time I watched Jenny's video, I was aghast at how dysfunctional it seemed, and I still have no doubt it was so dysfunctional for her and many others. At the same time, I empathize with Starcruiser's creative team because the sheer intricacy of productions like this virtually guarantees that things will go wrong. Even the most linear forms of experiential entertainment fail from time to time. Technology breaks, performers get sick. What's unacceptable about Jenny's experience isn't that aspects of Starcruiser failed, it's that it failed comprehensively, and she wasn't rightly reimbursed for entertainment she paid for and didn't receive. This isn't like having one attraction at a theme park being out of service. It's like having every attraction being out of service just for you. Title notwithstanding, I obviously can't fix Starcruiser's problems without at least a comprehensive view of its internal workings and operational costs, but, I mean, feel free to give me a call, Bob. Jenny speculates that Disney couldn't fix Starcruiser for architectural reasons, and I suspect that she's right, but I also suspect the most significant reason why this was doomed from the start is because Starcruiser is not Disney's lane of entertainment. As Imagineer Wendy Anderson said,
we never get to do something like this on this scale. It's not, in the parks we tend to talk about thousands of people at a time or thousands of people an hour. This is much more intimate.
The truth is, something of this length with this level of interpersonal detail was never going to survive at Disney. Even with the exorbitant price tag, I'd bet that its profit margins were too thin and the guest throughput was too low, even at full capacity. I personally find that deeply cynical, and I'd rather live in a world where the existence of art like this has higher societal value than how many pennies can be squeezed from it, but that's not the world we live in. Maybe this is cynical of me, but the way Disney could scale something like this is to actually make the thing they tried to distance themselves from, an actual themed hotel where guests stay for the duration of their theme park vacation. Create a premium add-on experience that complements their stay, where all activities previously featured in Starcruiser's continuous 2-day journey are parceled out episodically across the guest's vacation schedule. Disney could build enough duplicate attractions to accommodate a much larger throughput, all culminating in a dinner theater experience with a final fight scene. This is decidedly much less immersive than Starcruiser, but certainly more immersive than what can be experienced in the theme parks themselves, and also much more closely aligned to Disney's financial goals. Well, those are my thoughts on Starcruiser. If anyone watching at home attended or helped work on its production, I would love to hear from you. Feel free to drop your perspective in the comments below, and of course, that goes for the rest of you too. I always enjoy talking with you about games and what you're playing. So until next time, friends, happy gaming. Be deputized to either hump down the rebel scum. I mean, if Poe Dameron's involved, okay. So even if the Thompsons are from, man, I am reading not. Read not, I won't. Wait, I won't not? Read not, I won't not. Nope.